us for dinner.
That's the spike!
And we are officially live on the Flat Five podcast, episode 14, with Mark Swan and Tim Baltes. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I am very excited to just nerd out and talk drums for as long as humanly possible. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great, bud.
Good.
Oh,
Marky, dude, where are you at right now, Mark?
I'm in London, Ontario.
Very rare. It's the two continents, London
know.
and Ontario. Wow.
The European Canadian tour.
Yeah.
Happy Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, and I did the same thing as last time. I couldn't record it in Tottenham because the Wi-Fi is just too garbage. So I'm like, I gotta drive another 30 minutes south just to get to a good spot. But I'm in the Kleinberg location as opposed to Caledon. I decided to go like 15 minutes east. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is a little bit better here.
Where the Wi-Fi is good.
Exactly.
Who would think in 2022 that you would have that many freaking tech problems just because you live in Canada? Come on, guys, step it up. You got that maple syrup reserve money. Freaking come on.
Clogging up all the Wi-Fi.
For real. So Tim, tell us about this kit that you got in front of you right now.
Well, we're talking gear today, and what I've got going right now is a Franklin drum coat kit. Franklin, I've been working with them for almost 2 years now with Grady and Tim.
Nice.
Great couple of guys. Grady was the dude who was building Risen drums for a long time down here. And what happened was he had the opportunity to purchase the company, and he wanted to rebrand it, really make it his. And so what that effort has looked like is renaming the company and kind of jiggering every single piece of every single product. So this is a kit that really shows off all the work that his team has done and that I've been a part of. The logo is something that I helped finesse. I did some art direction on that. I did extensive research, and we had extensive discussions on the actual shell construction. On this kit, we settled on 2 different shell constructions. This kit is the maple kit. So it's very similar to what Slingerland did in the 70s, which is you have a maple cap on either end, then a ply of poplar, and then a center ply of maple again. No reinforcement ring. That's something you could add if you really wanted to, but straight shells are so nice because it bridges with the shell construction, those different plies. It bridges vintage and modern.
Mm-hmm.
You can cut a modern edge on it. You can cut as sharp an edge as you want to. I opted for not so sharp. But the poplar in there kind of adds this really lovely decay to the drums that you might hear from like an old Ludwig or an old Slingerland or whatever. This kit has graduated bearing edges. So the kick has full roundovers, and the toms here have 45 roundovers. Now you might be asking, what the heck does that mean? The more round the bearing edge is, the more contact you're going to make between the drum head and the drum shell. The more contact you have, the more that drum shell is going to influence your sound overall. You also get a shorter decay with a rounder edge. So that's why I wanted that on the kick. I want it 30. It's a small kick. It's 20 inches in diameter by only 12 deep, which is nice. 2 inches shorter than even classic bass drums.
Right.
So the 12-inch depth, that creates a different air column. So it has an air column, meaning the space inside the drum might look similar in proportion to a 22 by 14. We're getting into the dirtiest stuff here. I figure we probably started with 50 listeners. We're down to about 3 right now. But you know,
but it's a solid 3. Hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a solid 3.
That's good 3 people, the 3 stooges hanging around. So the round edge on here with that size, I get this really lovely recorded kick sound. It's super punchy, but it still has a ton of oomph. The toms, again, they kind of have this natural gait to them because of the poplar in there, and the 45 roundover kind of balances the tone that I'm getting from the drum head and the shell. So right now I have classic fit ambassadors on top, standard ambassadors on bottom. Classic fit are a little wider, so that extra film that's on the head
Yeah.
better conforms to the bearing edge. And these are nice, big musical, almost tympanic type sounds. Whereas if my standard sort of rock drum heads, I use white suede emperors. And white suede emperors, again, 2 plies versus the Ambassadors 1. And they also have this proprietary sort of coating that they put not only on the top of the first ply, the ply that you're hitting, but in between the 2 plies too. It's the same that you would find on the standard black suede heads, and it's just a white finish. So I like classic looking stuff. So I like the white heads. So what those do is I can get the lowest fundamental note out of these drums. And you're probably asking, Tim, what the heck's a fundamental note? That is the lowest pitch that you're going to be able to get out of a drum without it being too swampy, So I'll put white suedes on top and bottom, and now they go from being this tympanic sound with the Ambassadors to being this super thuddy dead rock thing. I can do big metal things, whether it's doom metal or whatever, funeral doom. I don't know what the kids do anymore. Or I can do, like a Kurt Weill type of thing too, where it's just kind of that indie kind of folk inspired big vintage thuddy thing with small toms. These are only 12 and 14-inch toms at classic depths, 12 by 8, 14, 14. And I can make them sound like 13, 16, or even, God willing, I can almost make them sound like a 14 and an 18 if I tune them the right way with the right heads, with the right mics and the whole bit. So for me, building this kit was about bridging modern technology and vintage sounds in a very, very intentional way. And I wanted to create something that was the most versatile studio tool I could.
Right.
That is also incredibly dependable on a gig. So it's visual aesthetics meets sound aesthetics meets practicality.
Absolutely.
So that's my drums.
It's an absolute fantastic kit. Now, what are you using for your snare?
So I use a variety of things. Right now, today, I was just finished up playing. I'm sweating my behind off right now because I just finished playing. But I use a 14 by 6.5 Black Beauty a lot. This is a special drum to me because I actually found it in the basement of a local music shop, and it was just in a parts bin, like just amid garbage. And I found this, and I got it for $200 US, which is a really, really good deal.
It's a good find.
So it had this goofy, someone like shellacked this thing. It looked like someone, I don't know what they did, but so I removed the shellac, and then I had this finish put on it that is reminiscent of the Black Beauties of the 20s and 30s. And if I can get it out of the snare basket real quick, you'll see my initials are on one of the panels here too.
Nice.
And this was all done in enamel paints, so it'll stay there for as long as I'm on this freaking planet, however long that is, and longer. And it was done by a really great painter who he's living in Vegas now, but he's originally a Chicago guy, and that just meant a lot to me to kind of. It's Ludwig is formerly a Chicago company forevermore, and to have a Chicago guy work on it, I thought was really fun. But I use this a lot. I like variety in my snares too. So my favorite metal snares, for the most part, have traditionally been Ludwig because they do everything. So I have 5 and 6.5 inch Superphonics, which are aluminum. I have a 6.5 inch Black Beauty. I have a 5-inch Super 400, which is before the Superphonic. They made this brass version that has a little different snare bed, has this real interesting honky sound. I have the 6.5 inch. This is a really rare drum back here. This is a bronze snare from the 80s that they made. I have a bison snare that was made. This was a gift from a friend of mine who passed away.
Are those wood hoops on that snare? I think you said
they are. Yeah, they're just standard Gibraltar wood hoops. So it does kind of like a. To me, it does that kind of Elvin Jones snare thing, the old Yamaha Elvin Jones thing.
Yeah.
I have a lot of 8-lug wood snares. So like I have the Slingerland 3-ply, which is kind of like the Ludwig Jazz Fest. I have a Jazz Fest I use all the time too. I have the Gretsch version, which is the Renown snare. I think I'm out of Rogers for the moment, but I do have a Leedy a bunch of leady hardware up on this. I don't even know if you can see that. You can't even see up there, so I'm not even going to talk about the freaking drum. I got a lot of stuff. I'm even I don't. When is this going to air? I might give you some secret details here if we know when this is going to air.
The hot gossip.
This will air probably next Sunday. That's what we aim for, recording on Sunday.
I'm gonna give away a couple secret deets.
Yes.
Oh, snap.
Mark, this is why we had this podcast, man.
Of course, yeah.
We want all
the inside scoop.
The inside scoop. I have been working on something with a builder in Oklahoma for months, and there's 2 of these drums that we're going to be releasing. If you're interested in something that's going to create a bell brass snare type tone for a third of the price, that's what we've created.
Nice.
It's a working man's drum. This drum is like 30 pounds. It's 1/4 inch thick. That's 6.35 millimeters steel. Yeah. And it's hex steel lug. So there's no springs. There's no nonsense.
Oh, wow.
And then what I did is I did the Indie throw off here with the Indie universal butt, which is a really great product. Designed by the same guy who designed all the Ludwig Atlas hardware.
Right.
It's 8 lugs, so you kind of open up the sound of the steel to give you that musicality that you tend to get out of brass.
Right.
1.6 millimeter hoops, which cut down on cost, but almost more importantly, increase the tonality that you get out of the drum. They kind of curb some of that nasty high end that you might get out of a die cast that's tuned in correctly, or a 2.3 millimeter, sort of a stiffer triple flange hoop. And again, they add to this sort of wide open thing that we're going for with this. My philosophy with drums has always been, particularly snares, is that you can always dampen a drum to dial it back.
Yeah.
But if you start from a place that's already, tampered down, you can't open that back up. So this is the most wide open snare you will find for under $3,000. The Tamas go for so much money. We're going to be retailing these at the 14x7 is going to be going for $1,000 in plus shipping, and the 14x4, which is my favorite, I posted a video of it the other day. That's going to be $899 plus shipping. The difference between the two is there's a lot of thought that went into these drums. So like the snare beds are very different on the 7 because I wanted to accommodate 42 strand wires on here properly.
Right.
Sure.
What that does is I'm very, very intentional about creating a balance between the snap, that high end that you're going to get out of the snare wires, and the body that you're going to get out of the snare shell. The snare beds on the 4-inch model, much shallower, much less width, because I want to accommodate 16 to 20 strand wires.
Right.
So, every element of both of these drums is just, I have a lot of love and blood, sweat, and tears into those drums, and I'm really, really happy with the way they turned out. But, it's just to say that if you know what you're doing as far as drums go, I've owned hundreds of drum sets and even more snare drums than that.
Right.
And if you can get to a point where you understand every single element of the drum, each of these 5% differences, the shape of the snare bed, maybe that makes a 5% difference in your sound. The number of lugs, maybe that makes a 5% difference. The hoops themselves, the type of hoop, that's a 5% difference. The type of material, there's a 10 to 20% difference. All of these things add up to make a huge difference from drum to drum. And that's why I've been able to tell the guys at Franklin Drum Co., this is what I want, because I know what it's going to do. In the same way that I've worked with another manufacturer to design these snares to say, I know exactly what this is going to do, and I know that it's going to be economical. And these are working man's drums that do what collector level drums do, whether you're live on stage or in a studio. So that's kind of the power of taking the time to play with these drums, to sit down with them, to understand them, so you can better predict and then execute what your sound aesthetic is going to be in any playing situation.
And I like the way you worded that they're working man's drums that do what the collector series would do. It's a really good way to phrase it. Now, can you remind me the name of the snare that you were just going through? Do you have like a brand name for that?
I'm gonna keep that under wraps for now. But
Ooh,
if you want
all right.
to order one, you're gonna DM me. DM me. We have we're doing a short run at first, and I already have there's a lot of hype.
Yeah,
A lot of hype.
sure.
Message me, get a drum, and be careful so you don't break your freaking toe up with it. All right.
Perfect.
Start benching it. So Tim, I wanted to ask, there was two things I wanted to ask both of you guys. One, Tim, your recent partnership with Big Fat Snare Drum, because I've been loving the videos that you've been doing, but also to give Mark some airtime talking about the Los Cabos deal that you got recently as well.
Yeah.
So
Mark,
Yeah,
go
was
ahead,
it-
dude.
no,
I love those Los
for
Cabos
sure.
sticks. Those are great people.
Yeah, shout out to Ryan. He reached out to me on Instagram. I think it's pretty cool that they're not only like a Canadian company, but they're manufactured here as well.
Mhm.
I think that was sort of important to me, just sort of trying to support local, especially in recent times for sure.
Right.
But yeah, big fan of their red hickory sticks, which they're a little bit denser than just a normal hickory, and they have a little bit more weight to them, because I've always found like I usually play a lot of country music, but also dabble in like jazz and some other stuff. But country music, especially, like hitting that backbeat is just like so insanely important.
Mhm.
And so having a stick, because I used to play 2Bs all the time, and admittedly finessing around the kit with a pair of 2Bs isn't the most fun thing in the world. So I think having just a different material really helped out, especially with my playing and my sound. So I've been using a 5B red hickory, which honestly, even if you just throw like the butt end on that backbeat snare, it's just gonna pop. It's just really gonna have that punch. And so that, and then again for lighter stuff, I use their 8As, which again is just a smaller ball tip. But yeah, that was a really cool partnership that Ryan reached out to me and was interested in working together, and it's been super fun so far. So I've been super happy.
When did that happen? Like, how long have you been using?
Early December, I think. So only a couple of months since now, so it's pretty recent.
And how have you found the sticks like on sessions?
Great. Haven't had a problem since, and even just like their diversity of products. They've got brushes, they've got mallets. I actually have like 3 or 4 pairs of like bass drum / timpani mallets that I've been using since I went to school. So
nice.
It was like, hey, we got bust out the old classics. But
hey, right.
Yeah, they've been super helpful, and especially again modern times, a lot more session work than opposed to live stuff, and haven't had any issues with them so far. So it's been great.
Oh yeah, man, I was really excited to see that when you made that TikTok video.
Yeah,
I was like, this is dope. And Tim, you just recently, I want to say maybe, has it been around the December time or maybe top of January where you've been doing videos with Big Fat Snare Drum?
Yeah, that's been in the works for a little while. So I love those guys. Chris and Ben, really good dudes, great friends, and they've been super supportive of me, particularly the last few months here, bringing me on to make these videos. And basically, the exchange is that I provide them with content,
right,
and in turn, they do all my scheduling and billing through their Shopify tools.
right.
So it simplifies the purchase process for my lesson stuff.
sure.
It's been really great. I'm not doing a ton of volume right now. I actually accepted a full-time position. I can't talk about too many details except for that I'm starting in a week, and I'm a copywriter for a musical instrument company, and I'm really happy about it. And I'll put the details out publicly by spring. But what's nice with the Big Fat Snare Drum partnership is that I can still work my 9 to 5 and say, all right, guys, just give me 6 hours on Saturday, 6 hours on Sunday, and they'll put them up, and people will buy them.
Right.
So it's perfect. I've always been a fan of their products. I used to work with Justin Potts, who had a company called Visionary Drum, which was the company that actually made these inserts for Big Fat Snare Drum with the art on them. And Justin was a great guy, and he had nothing but good things to say about working with Chris. So I connected with Chris first briefly at NAMM in 2019. I think after that, the next time that we really hit it off was me and Ben. I did the Big Fat Five snare, the podcast, snare drum podcast.
Yeah.
Right. And went from there. But yeah, it's been a great little partnership. For me, it's just as much about the sort of business aspect of being able to optimize my billing and my scheduling as it is about being able to get in front of a different audience too.
Yeah, of course.
So, as I enter this full-time job, then there's an opportunity to start doing podcasts, with Big Fat Snare Drums. So I'm looking forward to that too. Now what's so nice about having a 9 to 5 and being a musician, and I still consider myself a professional musician. I mean, I'm going to be writing about freaking drums. So I think that's good enough.
The dream.
It is the dream. And, what's nice about that is now I'm going to have this steady paycheck coming in from the day job.
Right.
And I don't have to worry about money so much.
Mm-hmm.
So I can start to just, I can turn projects away when I want to turn projects away. And what I can do is focus what attention and energy I have towards things I love. Absolutely. Which would be, continuing to build community in the ways that I did in the early days of my Instagram, 2015, 2016. Yeah. And sure. I'm just like really looking forward to that because, as we're talking about gear here today, like people message me about that kind of stuff all the time. Like, hey, I got this drum set. I don't know what it is. Can you tell me anything about it? Or, hey, I want my snare to sound like this. This is what it is. What do I do with it? Mm-hmm. And what's so nice is that, again, it's these sort of questions that come in via DM that turn into conversations that have turned into flourishing, friendships with people.
Yeah.
Sure. I think that's, that's worth more than, I don't know, even the drumming itself is just being able to, this is a catalyst for community. And that's what I'm all about.
And I think that's the coolest part. Yeah. Especially even just with Instagram or whatever, like, whether you're talking about gear or whatever, it seems that much more accessible to sort of learn and be able to interact with some of your favorite drummers or even musicians.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And that was one of the things, Tim, that I always appreciated like early on, because you and I have been chatting via Instagram probably since like 2018 or 2019. Just the fact that you're so open and willing to share information, for the progression of the young drummer or any sort of musician that's kind of like trying to find their way. And that's an asset that not a lot of people are willing to share. So I can say, on behalf of myself as well, that people are very appreciative of your time to share that kind of information, right? It's a very good thing, man. You're a good guy.
I do my best. I do my best to be a good person.
You want to know what's funny? I remember I was watching a couple of your videos. This was probably like 2019. And my dad's like, you need to find a way to like do some drumming videos that's like a little bit funny, like something that can kind of like err on the side of like humor, as opposed to like, look how in time I'm playing and look how perfect every snare note is, kind of thing, right? The things that not a lot of people will really recognize. And I was like, like that's a pretty good idea. And then I saw your videos with the hamburgers, and we talked about this in the last show where you placed hamburgers along the whole drum set. And I just remember like watching that 3 or 4 times in a row. Like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen somebody do with the drum set. And it's like fat tones from those patties.
That was the most ridiculous thing. Mark, did you catch that? Have you been around?
I remember that video. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Literally, I put a bogus note in one of my posts that was just like, if someone PayPals me $100, I'll buy $100 worth of burgers and put them all over my drum set. And then some freaking guy in England literally did it. That's the most beautiful thing about this. And it extends beyond that. Like, the kindness of our community is so unlike.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Other guitarists are snobs, and I'll say it. I don't care. I'll say
They're always neck and neck.
No, I hear that. Yeah, it's bizarre how it doesn't translate of like the sharing and just like you see, a lot of other instruments are so gatekeepy.
Yeah, the only other instrument I tend to see it with is keyboards. Like synth guys, for the most part, are fairly open about talking gear, talking tones, and that sort of thing. And sure, I think some people still gatekeep in any community, but as far as openness, there's nothing matched to drummers.
No.
Oh, it's true. You know what's funny too, and I'll bring a little bit of Canadian culture into the discussion for a second, because I grew up as a hockey player, as a goalie, and I played like a tier or two, depending on the year, below like AAA, which was kind of like the little bit more, like super competitive, like maybe career, or maybe hockey is like a possible career kind of, division. And when I was doing my goalie training back in, it would have been like grade 10 through 11, which was where I was like really, really doing hockey. I probably like 4 to 5 times a week. All the goalies, like you could almost tell who was a goalie, even if they were just wearing a suit and tie before the game, because it was just the person that you feel like you could approach and that you could talk to. And I've always seen so much of that relation from hockey to drums. Being Canadians, of course, what I'm going to see, like, it's all binded together. But you have other players on the team, the center or the wing or whatever, that are always like this is my thing and I do this and it's just me and the lone wolf. Whereas goalies and drummers and whatnot are just like, it's just music, it's just community. It's about, making sure that you can continue doing what you want to do.
Absolutely.
I think that's why it's so important, like with this snare drum, like the snare drum I developed, if we want to get back to gear, is like, there are so many companies out there now. I'm not going to name names, but custom companies, not even traditional name brand companies, that are selling drum sets for $10,000, $15,000, and like, how do you do that? Like, you cannot. No, the only people who can afford that stuff are like blues lawyers and churches, mega churches. So, for me, as we talk about, community wise, whatever, DMing people or whatever like that, speaking with people, in the same way as a manufacturer or a retailer, I think it's important to find ways to help real working musicians who don't have 15,000 freaking US dollars to spend on a drum set. Yeah. So, that's kind of what inspired this snare drum, because I literally just saw another manufacturer who posted something where it's like, he's basically took something similar to what we're building and just put all this flash and pomp all over it, and then charges twice as much. And it's like, dude, like, I get it, you got to make a living, but at what expense? Yeah. That's why, when I talk gear, vintage Japanese drums.
That's what y'all know about? I've been on lately too. Yeah.
Come on, Mark. Tell me about it, Mark.
I bought 2 80s Tama kits in the last month.
Oh yeah, that's true. I've seen those. Yeah.
I got one back here. It's an old Swing Star in disgusting nicotine stained white. It looks hilarious, but it's got giant power toms and everything. But that's been my go-to kit for a very, like, since I got it. So maybe mid 2021. Wow. But that thing's unbelievable. I found a Superstar back in October as well. So that's been my main gigging kit now, which is awesome. But yeah, vintage, at least like in the 80s, Japanese made drums are unbelievable.
And even stuff from the 60s. I was just hanging out with a buddy of mine he's 62 now, and he's been playing drums since he was a kid. And I was telling him about the company I'm working for, and then telling him about, talking about some of these other companies. And he was saying, man, like, what about that? I brought up Tama for some reason, and he said, man, Tama drums suck. And I was like, well, what? This has come from a 62-year-old dude. And I said, man, what are you talking about? Yeah. He's like, man, when I was a kid, those drums sucked. They were so bad, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, okay, here's the difference. In 2022, you can buy a vintage Tama made or Pearl made drum set from the 60s for $300. Then what you do is you bring it to a guy who fixes drum sets, and you have him true the bearing edges so that it's all round and pretty, and you have him stuff the lugs so the springs inside don't ring. And now all of a sudden, for $300 for the drums, and say $300 for the work, new heads, that whole thing. Now you have, for less than half the price, an American style vintage tone out of a drum set that is probably now much more resilient than the American stuff. It's and I don't know. It just makes sense to me. And as far as the stuff that you were talking about, Mark, dude, those swing stars down here, the 80s swing stars, you can still pick up for $200-$300 for a drum set.
Exactly.
And they're killer. You know, if you play grunge, if you play doom, loud,
that's
stuff
that Dave Grohl sound. That's what it is.
That's literally what it is. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. And the superstars you can still find in traditional depths. So you could find a 22 by 14, 12 by 8, 13, 9, 16, 16. And now, you know, something like that I usually see going for $800 to $1,200 for a set US up here. And you can find them cheaper if you keep an eye on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Even at, you know, at $800 or $1,000, you're still getting a really killer, well-made, all maple set that is now, you know, 40-ish years old. So all the wood has had all that time to let whatever moisture out. So those drums are going to ring and resonate so well.
Exactly.
It's, in my opinion, again, just to get back to the point here, is like there are so many different ways to economically put together a drum set that will give you just as good a tone as my $3,000, $4,000 drums. So just, you know, think about that the next time you're buying drums. And I don't know, Ian, do you want to talk about recording equipment? Can we talk about that?
That's so funny. So I was just about to say, there's a few things that I've actually been wanting to ask you guys since we scheduled. Sure. One of the things, the first note that I have is what everyone's favorite rudiment is. And that's a very short one. I just want to get that out of the way because I find that drummers have like this one rudiment that they always practice to sort of get all like the rust out of the wrists in that morning. For me, it's literally going from single to double to triple paradiddles. And I feel like going from like my 16th to my 16th note triplets to my 32nd notes, that I feel like I get the most out of it. And then, you know, incorporating some sort of like one-handed like triplet roll. But I'm like, what are some other drummers like go-to warm up? Like someone's asking you to play and you haven't had enough time to warm up. And like, what's that one rudiment or, you know, groups of rudiments where you kind of play it together? So I'll ask Mark. Mark, what's your rudiments?
Mine's Swiss Army triplets.
Nice.
Just a flam and 2 taps. I've actually just did a couple TikToks about it, just warming up, and that's my go-to warm up anytime I'm near a pad or warming up for a show. That or just I have like the first page of Ted Reed's Syncopation stuck in my head. But yeah,
absolutely.
Those are like my 2 go-to warm ups whenever I'm, whether it's playing kit, whether it's playing with an orchestra or something. It's always just Swiss Army triplets, super helpful because it just gets. I find like flams really sort of open your ears up to your playing, and you really start listening more because you're going to hear those disgustingly flat flams, or you're going to hear the wide open ones. So it really just gets the hands and your ears going at the same time. Absolutely.
And Tim, what's your opening up? Your opening rudiment?
Listen, I don't know anything about freaking rudiments, but I'll tell you what. No, I mean, I know enough to be dangerous.
I know you do.
But so much of the language that I've developed on drum set is just based on me listening to music and then emulating it with my hands. So I don't necessarily know some of these, you know, the traditional language around drumming. You know, I know my paradiddles, I know my Swiss Army triplets, I know my Hertas and my Kukuli doos, but
it's all singles and doubles at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, it literally
truly. Yeah. And so, you know, the one piece of drumming language that I talk to with a lot of my students is I use 2 different pieces, which is one is just right, left, left. And the other is right, left, left. So I call that the Cucamonga Djibouti. That's what I call that one. Classic. Very rare. It's a very rare rudiment.
Tim, I need you to make a book of all of your Kuka Djibouti rudiments.
Very rare. Very rare.
Peter Erskine style, where you're sitting there very calm and collected, nice cashmere sweater. Today we'll be breaking down the Kuka booty. And now it's, or like Fred Armisen.
I like that it just keeps becoming, it just becomes a shorter word every time. I think Kuka booty, that's the new one. That's it.
Kuka booty.
I'm going to Kuka bootify your drumming. But
perfect.
You know, what I was told is that a lot of my playing sounds like Bill Bruford, which is never someone whose playing I've dug into a ton, but he's something I've seen him speak about his playing, and I really love him from a philosophical side. So I've been trying to dig more into the way that he plays and how he does what he does. And I also had a buddy of mine down in Texas His name is Grimmy. I call him Grimbus. And Grimmy called me one day, and he's like, Tim, I figured out what you do. And I was like, oh, well, how do I do what I do? He said everything for me is based around the inverted paradiddle. So whatever that is, that's what I do, I guess.
Interesting. Very interesting. And so that was one of the questions I've always been curious about. But let's reel it back to recording, as we said. So one of the questions that I had was, I've recently become really fascinated with NPR's like recording setup, which is where this like sort of questions have come about, because I saw Turnstile's video on NPR, and I was like,
Tiny Desk stuff.
Tiny Desk, yeah.
Yeah.
This is they're a very loud hardcore band, like, you know what I mean? Like they get it. And I'm sitting there thinking, how is it that they're gonna get, you know, the Turnstile sound, aside from the artistic choices, like, you know, how they choose to play the songs, but how are they going to achieve that sound where it still has some balls and some oomph to it, you know, without having to need like a full live studio recording setup? And so it got me thinking for this podcast, like, you know, a lot of drummers can get some stuff done with the Yamaha EAD, and then, you know, get that full kit sound. But the first thing I was going to ask was, what is everyone's favorite top mic or top and bottom sort of partnering with the snare? What your favorite sort of snare mic is?
Mark, go ahead.
I think in the classic 57 is usually what I use, but I also love using an Audix i5 for a snare top, which is again just a 57 copy with just drum EQs pre-made into it. But those have been my go-to, especially for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years that I've been getting more to recording, for sure.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Tim?
Yeah, for me, I do use 57s. I tend to use Unidyne 357s, which are the old American versions, just because I've been lucky enough to find some. They're freaking expensive now, but I've been lucky enough to find some marked as normal 57s for like $50. So I was like, okay. And there is a difference in sound between the two. On top, I'll still use a normal 57 most of the time because I don't want to, you know, hit this or I don't want to hit a nice one. The other thing I really love, and it's an expensive microphone, is the 421. And the reason is the MD 421 by Sennheiser is really, really great on snare drum because and toms, because you have this high pass filter on top. So I'm monitoring my drums in real time. I'm doing my own engineering. So I can sit down, and if something sounds like it's going to be too woofy, too much low end once I get in the box, then I can just turn a knob and immediately dial it in. And tonally, it sounds great. The other thing I always talk to people about too is, like, again, getting back to economical options. Yeah, there is a SM57 copy still available. Well, it was a month ago. Hopefully, at some point, somebody's gonna send them a cease and desist. But there's a company called Pyle, Pyle.
Our David Hart talks about them.
Yeah, the PD Mic 78, which is literally a Chinese 57 copy. And for a time, when I was still working in a music shop, so that would have been about 10, 15 years ago, those mics were coming over to the States marked as Shure microphones. So there were a few, we had to open up every single 57 that we bought in the shop to confirm, is it real or is it not?
Yeah.
And what's nice about these PDs is really they are built like tanks. They're built just like a 57. I had a student last year who was trying to put together a full recording setup on a budget. And he was like, well, what do I get for my set? You know, I want to have, you know, all close mics on all my drums. I want to have overheads and I want to have a room mic. I was like, all right, get 8 PD Mic 78s, 8 of these $15, $20 SM57 copies and put them on the drum set. And lo and behold, that sounded almost as good as my super frickin' expensive drum setup. It sounds great. So, like, don't overthink this stuff. You know, just if you can tune your drums well and hit them in a way in which they sound good, if you put some frickin' microphones around your drum set, it's probably going to sound good. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. Sure. That's end of my freaking rant right there.
Oh, man. So It's funny that you mentioned the 421 because that was I did a session recently where we were trying that out, and it actually caught me by surprise because a lot of the times it's usually like a 57 on the top, maybe some sort of like, you know, short condenser or like like a condenser, you know, taped together.
Yeah.
Bottom mic, you know, usually changes. I'm a big fan of putting a condenser like right over the top hoop of the inside of like the batter head of the kick drum to kind of get like that really fat punchy sound. Now overhead mics like the Glenn Johns, the paired mic at the top, what is everyone's favorite overhead mic placement?
Marky
I
do?
usually just do a space pair. That's just left and right. I usually run a pair of Art AR5 active ribbon mics. They're just a little bit darker. Also, my main drum tone is this mic I'm talking into right now, which is just a warm 47 Junior.
Right.
So that's a nice, really nice mic. But yeah, as far as overheads, I love using ribbon mics. Typically, if it's something more lo-fi, you can definitely just get away with just a mono, like right in front of your head, pretty much. But usually, just space pair, set of ribbon mics. That's usually my go-to for overhead sound.
For sure.
Yeah, and I the way that I kind of do my drum sound, I have a pretty signature sound. When you hear my drums, for the most part, you can say, "Oh, that's Tim's drums," and the reason is because I'm lazy and I don't like to move my mics. So
me neither.
So the way that I get my sound is I do have a pair of 414s that I use as overheads, but I consider them cymbal microphones. I have all these close mics here to capture the drums. These two are just up here to get my crashes and my jingles, apparently, and my hi-hats. And the majority of what glues all these different close mics together for me is a room mic. So in the same way that Mark is using, you know, economical ribbon mics for your overheads, I use the cheapest piece of crap ribbon mic for my room mic.
Perfect.
So and you know what, it makes a huge difference. And what I love about ribbons is that you curb that top end so it sounds a little more natural, and usually you can bring that back with some EQ if you want, without, you know, with minimal noise. And they have this beautiful mid-range, which is really where our drum sets sit sonically. Try saying that 800 times fast. Our drum sets sit sonically. So the room mics, you know, or overheads, but particularly with room mics, I think it can be really, really helpful if you have that extra channel. Even just having a mono room mic, which is what I use, can help just really fill in that entire drum sound. The 47 Junior is another great option. Again, the reason I tend to stick with a ribbon mic is because it's warmer, because it's so mid-heavy. I can put that, generally what I do, a lot of my sound is, and this is not a plugin I recommend for a lot of things, but Waves CLA drums, usually people think of it as like, you know, the easy button. You turn this thing on and your drum instantly sounds good. However, once you know what a CLA drums plugin sounds like on a close mic, it's like the super kick by Aquarian. The super kick on any drum is going to sound like a super kick. The CLA drums on any drum is going to sound like CLA drums. With room mic, it's a little different because I'm melding that with all these other tones, so it works really well on there. Or I'll just use, you know, like an API 560, which is a 10-band EQ, just to kind of finesse it a little bit, along with the CLA 76, which is like an 1176 type compressor, just to kind of that's a technical term.
Yeah. Oh my god, absolutely. Yeah. So the next curiosity question that I have is, if there was one specific kit you would each tour with, and I'm talking like full kit setup, you know, whether it be like touring with an artist like Alessia Cara to Slipknot, doesn't matter what the genre is. If there was one kit that you know that could get all jobs done, including your cymbals, sizes, you know, China on the left, 24-inch on the right, Oriental, you name it. What is your your equivalent of your working man's touring setup that'll get all the jobs done?
I'm a
Mark.
Meat and potatoes player myself, but
yeah, baby.
I think the big thing for me is 2 floor toms. That's usually the move for me.
Right.
I've been super big into Tama stuff recently. I've always been curious seeing people tour with like vintage kits. I can't imagine that's very fun. So that always makes me laugh, seeing people touring with like vintage Keystone Ludwigs, and I'm like, ooh, you're gonna have to buy new kick legs at some point, or
Yeah.
your lugs are going to break when you're on the road. But just little things like that. So I think keeping as modern as you possibly can with 2 floor toms has always been my go-to as far as setup.
And what do you have in terms of cymbals?
I'm a big Sabian guy, especially their HHX line. So anything involving their Extreme series or their studio stuff, I find is just unbelievably perfect for every occasion.
Yeah,
and shout out to the old Jojo Mayer Fierce Ride.
Oh yeah,
I love that thing way more than the Omni, and I don't know, whatever.
It's special, dude. The Fierce Ride is special.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, I think that's like one of those rare gems, because at least for drummers, we don't really get like signature items. Maybe it's like a snare drum or something, compared to like guitarists who have like signature guitars and pedals and whatever, right? But for drummers, it's usually like a signature snare drum and then like maybe a ride or something. And so I think of that one when I think of like, that's like a really cool original product. Sabian 21-inch HHX Fierce Ride.
Yeah, I love all of JoJo's demo videos, like those old ones, playing his Sonar kit. And even, I mean, the Omnis are pretty good too, but I get what you mean about that Fierce Ride, man. It's just, it has more originality to it, right? And
it just, it has that ping and that thing that's always just going to cut, because those old Jack DeJohnette cymbals, do you remember those, Tim?
Oh yeah.
The white labels on those.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just like a Canadian thing or whatever, but I see like those, the rides especially, in like every studio I've ever been in, because they're like, it does that thing really, really well, and like nothing else. It's really heavy. It's got a monstrous bell on it, but it's absurdly dry.
Yes,
in a way that you wouldn't think would translate to like rock or pop music or whatever. But then you'll be seeing like rock session players like clanging on that thing with a bell, and then you can see a pop record where they're playing it just because it has that finesse and that touch to it. So
that's such a good point. It's so funny that every Canadian studio has one of those. And I've even gone.
And I don't know if just because Sabian and so it's in Canada or whatever. But
Tim, do you find the Jack DeJohnettes up there?
Oh yeah. I think they were called the Encore Ride, I believe, right?
That's what I just remember the white labels on them. Look so cool.
Super dark, pre-aged, great cymbal. What we have to remember here is that like Sabian and Zildjian are the same family.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so those being really, the Zildjian being the biggest cymbal manufacturer in the world, Sabian sitting right around 2, right alongside Meinl at this point. Sabian takes that alloy, the same alloy that we've been familiar with on every frickin' classic rock and jazz and swing recording going back 100 years, takes that sound and, or rather the same alloy, and turns it into a new sound. The original, the original 2 series they started out with the B20 series, which was basically a more hand-touched A.
Yeah.
And they introduced B8. But what's beautiful now is like I'm fortunate enough to have lots of Zildjians and a whole set of the new HHX complex series cymbals.
Those are amazing.
I was hoping you would say that. I love them. The video that David Leach did to promote the release of them, I was like, these are butter. This is amazing.
They are, and what's so great is like they accomplish something that you cannot get from anyone else. The thing I love from Zildjian is the K Constantinople line. And I use generally what I'm using is a 22-inch medium thin low, and I'll have a 20-inch medium thin low here. And the reason is that I can get, this is just a Crash of Doom right now because I was doing some fun little hip hop stuff.
Crash of Doom, I love those.
Great cymbal too. But with the 2 medium thin lows, 20 and 22, I get a definitive crash sound, I get a definitive ride sound, I get a definitive bell sound. And all of those tones on those cymbals are great. They sort of have a cap on volume. So even if I was beating the crap out of them, it's only going to get to a certain threshold volume wise, which is really important to me. And they're so complex. Now, when we get to the HHX complex series, I have 19 and 22 inch thin crashes, 21 and 22 inch thin rides, which are basically like my K-Cons, and the 15-inch medium hats. The difference between the HHX Complex thin rides and the Zildjian K-Con medium thin lows is that the HHX Complex thin sort of balances a modern, sleek, clean sound with the sort of complex overtones that we're used to from, K-Constantinople, AGOP 30th, anniversary, Meinl Foundry Reserve, these sort of canonical sounds at this point, basically Istanbul K sounds. Yeah. So, what I really love about that Sabian series is that it's pushing a vintage sound forward in a new way. There's a I think it's a Kendrick Lamar song, but it talks about there's like a quote I think at the end of it at the beginning that talks about how if we only imitate, then we're not moving anything forward. But if we sort of imitate but kind of turn it into our own thing, now we're pushing our craft forward, whatever our craft is. And so that's what I appreciate about the HHX Complex thin. But to get back to the original question, if I could play any kit live, if I had a drum tech and I had a freaking set of hard cases on wheels and the whole bit of semi, I would probably have a vintage kit on the road, and I would not care because I would have the budget to ensure that I had all the extra parts I needed when we left. But in lieu of that, that's why I designed this kit. This Franklin kit here is everything I love about the vintage sound and every inconvenience fixed. The thing I love about the custom snare that I designed, it's like all the things I love about the old brass snares, everything I love about a Black Beauty, but without any inconvenience. If I drop this steel snare, I could throw it in a freaking lake, use it as a boat anchor, keeping my boat, sitting out by a freaking lily pad just for the beautiful scenery, just to look at it from my dock. I could leave it out there for a year and a half, come back, pull it out, put new heads and wires on it. It's still going to be just fine.
Of course.
If anything got better, it changed with Mother Nature and
that patina, baby, patina,
earthy tone.
Earthy tone.
I've done that. I've buried cymbals for like a couple months, and they sound unbelievable. Like it does a thing.
Absolutely.
But and then to cymbals wise, I love the HHX Complex thin. If I was playing Sabians out, I'd be playing those, and if I was playing my Zildjians, I'd be playing my K-Con medium thin lows. And the other thing I do like too is, as far as hats go, is Zildjian does the 15-inch K Custom Special dry hats. Yep. Those hi hats will do anything you want. I don't care if you're playing your grandma's polka music or death metal. That's the hats.
Absolutely.
One other thing I'd like to touch on too, I guess, would then just be like sticks. I think, I like Los Cabos. Those folks again are great, and I'm fortunate to have a relationship with the folks at Vic Firth. Yeah. And so what I'm using from them is I have the 5A double glaze because I have dry hands. So those are really helpful. But I play a variety of sticks, in the same way that I like a variety of snares to give me all sorts of different tones. Exactly. I want a variety of sticks so that it feels different. And in that feel, I can create a different mood for a different song. Absolutely. So 5A double glaze is one of my go-tos. The other big go-to I use is I don't know if I got one handy here. I just literally threw some on the ground. Here's a FD2 Bolero. Now,
those are great.
Yeah. Great stick. And the reason I like
Brian
this is
Blade choice.
Yeah. Right. That's right.
The reason I like these is that it's a different wood than the 5A. So the 5A is a hickory. This is a SD2 Bolero is a maple. This is way thicker. And even though it's way thicker, they weigh just about the same. I believe the SD2 Bolero is a 1/4 inch shorter. Right. So it's 15 3/4 versus 16 inches. The taper is a little different too. This has a super short taper on the SD2, which helps to create a nice consistent sound. and it keeps your volume consistent too from hit to hit. It also includes, even though this is like this is like playing a freaking tree branch, the tip, it has this really small tip on here. And what that allows you to do is to get some incredibly sensitive tones out of your drums. And if you lay into your drums where you're kind of getting your tone from both the tip and the shoulder, you get all the volume you'd ever want. Todd Zuckerman, who I was fortunate enough to have steaks with the other month and to talk about Chicago hot dogs and pizza. Todd was talking about how much he loves a really thick, lightweight stick. And again, the reason you can get all the volume we want, you're not working yourself to death like you would with like a Hickory 5 or a 2B or a Hickory rock stick. And because it's so chunky, now it's just much easier to hold on to than a thinner stick. That's just, I guess his theory is that over decades of drumming is going to ensure that you don't have as many wrist problems or, carpal tunnel type issues. So, that's the other thing I think about too is, dude, I've had so many freaking health problems the last 5-6 years that, the last thing I want is to have my hands or shoulders or anything else fart out, prematurely on my body. So
totally.
When Todd was talking about the way he grips a stick, the way he throws a stick, that's the kind of stuff I listen to that from any clinician, because I want to try to make the best decision for me that allows me to get the tone that I want out of the drum and the longevity that I want out of my body.
100%. Yeah. And it's funny too, like for the longest time, I've been playing the Vic Firth 3As, which I'm a big fan of those sticks, and it allows me to do a lot of things. The only thing I wish is that I could take the stick tip, like the head of the stick from the Vic Firth 1As and slap it on the taper shoulder and butt essentially of the 3A.
I think the 3A has a barrel. The 1A has the Taj Mahal, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I love the tone that I got out of the Taj Mahal back when I was at Humber College working with the likes of like Ben Ball and Mark Kelso and whatnot. I'd be going through different types of sticks, whether it be the 7A and I love the feel of it, but I felt that the 3A was the most versatile. The only issue I had is that I didn't have so much control with the barrel tip as I would with the Taj Mahal. And there's just something about the Taj Mahal that I love. And it's like, I asked my dad, I'm like, what's the reality of me taking down this barrel tip and making it into a Taj Mahal? And
bust out the lathe, bud. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, like I would totally do it. And the thing that I found is, I believe if I recall correctly, I haven't used the 1A probably since like it would have been like 2017. Besides going through some 7As or like 5As, et cetera, et cetera. I think that was around the same time when ProMark came out with the Fire Grain sticks, which I was trying to. Everything besides the stick head, from the 1A to the 3A, I found the 3A was a million times better towards my playing. Like I had the beef, but they weren't super heavy. And I felt like the rebound that I was getting off the stick was where my wrist naturally aligned, like how I wanted the stick to feel. It's just that Taj Mahal tip. That's all I need,
Here's something to consider is like whether you're talking about making custom drums or custom whatever, cymbals even at this point. Yeah. If you work with smaller manufacturers, you can have this stuff made. In the US, I always recommend, if someone's like, man, I love this stick, but I have this feature. There's a great dude down in Louisiana, Frank Kinsell. He owns a company called LA Backbeat. Okay. And you can go in, and I don't know what his minimum order is, but I bet you could buy a brick of sticks or 2 bricks of sticks with whatever custom features you want. And now you have exactly the stick you want. Los Cabos might be at the level where they might be able to accommodate you there too. So
they have options. Admittedly, when you were talking, they actually have a stick called the Jazz. That's actually, it's a 3A size, but it's more like a smaller ball tip, so you can get more finesse. Not to be a salesperson on you, but
hey,
definitely, I would recommend that one if you were looking for something.
100%, man. See a need, fill a need. Like if you kind of need something from it, to quote robots there.
Well, I was curious about you guys because I'm not a fan of like super long drumsticks. I don't know. That's just my playing style.
They're so stupid. They're
anything above a 16, I don't want to play.
And that's why I didn't play the 1As, because the 1As are noticeably longer in terms of like feel, and not just like looking at it, right? But it feels longer. And I always felt like I had to position my drums a little bit too far away from me to where every stroke landed in the center or just off the center, depending on what type of stroke, right? And that's literally why I just settled for the 3A. And as I'm literally playing, instead of going down into the cymbal with this sort of angle, I'll like lift up and just trying to get the rounded edge of the barrel to get that more sensitive touch, right? Because I can't with the barrel tip, right? But yeah, long sticks are indeed
I don't get it.
So stupid.
Do you remember those old Alex Van Halen ones?
Oh God,
I had a pair of those.
They were like 20 inches long, and I was like, who are these for?
Yeah.
I remember walking past like a drum shop and like seeing them like jut out half a foot from like
it's for the New York guys that have the drum set in front of them and they have to throw and catch the sticks to play the rhythm.
I guess, but I was like, I heard he has enormous hands, so I was like, okay, maybe that makes sense.
You could have those lunchbox hands.
Yeah, I picked those up and I was like, this is comical. Like, these are like batons. It's unbelievable.
Oh my God. And Tim, you owned a pair?
I did, yeah. I remember, because this was the beautiful thing about working at a used and vintage music shop when I was a kid, is we couldn't buy used drumsticks, but if you sold your drum set and you were just like, I just get rid of these drumsticks, I'd be like, yes, I will take those drumsticks home with me.
Perfect.
So there was a pair of Alex Van Halen's like in the collector's thing, and I was like, I'm not collecting these. I want to play them. So I pulled them out, and I mean, it's like, here's my drumstick. You know,
exactly.
Like it felt like I had two drumsticks in one hand. It was so dumb.
It was bizarre. Yeah.
I didn't realize he had such monster hands, though. I guess he's.
I looked at a photo and like they looked normal in his hands. I was like, okay, there's got to be something weird here.
Too funny.
He's got giant Hulk hands playing drums or something. But what do I know? So.
Oh well, gentlemen, I think this is a good point to cap it off. Sure. I appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart for coming on to the Flat Five podcast. It has been nothing but a pure pleasure with you two. So thank you for coming on the show.
Appreciate you asking, bud.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on too. I would like to leave the folks on one other note, is just to remember that, you know, there are so many options to your gear, and just remember that you do not have to spend a fortune to sound great. If you are a good drummer, you should theoretically be able to make almost any functional, any functional drum set sound good. You know, and in this,
what's that Steve Gadd video of him playing a cardboard box? It's the greatest brushes I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. So, you know, in the same way, you should be able to go out there and buy a set of drums and buy a set of cheap microphones and be able to make a decent little recording or a decent little Instagram video. And all you have to do is, if you have questions, please do not cry. Send any one of us a DM. Yeah. And you know, we're not gonna bite. We're nice people. You know, and I think that's the beautiful thing, is like, drummers are always there to help other drummers. So message another drummer, and hopefully they'll help you. And if they're a dingbat, then message me. You know, that's how that goes.
Yes. Tim, I honestly believe you have a lot more Canadian in you than you think, man.
Canadian and Midwest, it's similar.
It is. Yeah. I think the difference is we eat our cheese in solid form, and you eat yours in liquid form. That's the difference.
Get some poutine there, bud.
Yeah, baby.
All righty. Well, I think Tim, the day that you and I get bratwurst, we're gonna have Mark along as well too. We'll play.
That's right, baby.
Sign me up.
Some hockey, some baseball, and some brats.
Perfect.
All righty. Well, gentlemen, thank you again for coming on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure. For everyone listening, thank you for listening to this week's podcast. Make sure you follow, I believe it's at Mark Swan Music on Instagram.
On everything. Yep.
And
Instagram,
then
TikTok, YouTube, it all.
There you go. And Tim, it's Tim Baltes or Tim B Drums?
It's actually Timbo from Keno.
That's right. Timbo from Keno.
Yeah. So you can do that, or go to Tim Baltes, TimBaltes.com, and you'll find all sorts of info about me and my life.
100%. Absolutely. All righty, gentlemen. Thank you so much again. And to everybody listening to the Flat Five, we will talk soon. Take care, everybody.